Hi, everybody. I'm going to wait a couple minutes for people to join us. Oh, Miss Turley's already here from Indiana. It's good to see you tonight. Hopefully, a number of people will come and visit to hear all about what was happening in New York City when news of Lexington and Concord arrived on April 23rd, 1775. So I'll wait a couple more minutes. If you're here, put a little note in Facebook or YouTube so I'll know you're here. Mr. Davis, hello, Keenan. It's good to see you. Um, oh, Mrs. Healy. Hi, Ellen. It's always great to see you. Ellen, I actually today was looking at a historical marker about halfway between you and me, which I think might be a pretty neat place for us to meet this summer. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I have a number of projects coming up this summer. Some of you may have seen the video I did with my partner, Vinnie Langdon III, and our new company, Patriotic Pictures. We did a little video last week of the lantern lighting in 44, Pennsylvania at the historic Nathan Dennison House. And that was just a really quick little video that we threw together to commemorate that activity. But we are going to be doing some more complicated sorts of videos all about America 250, and many of them about battles and places that don't normally get remembered, and a number of them from the point of view of the reenactors who relive those events because they kind of get forgotten a lot of the time as well. Ms. Shea from North Carolina, welcome to Colonial New York City. Welcome to Hanover Square and my upstairs parlor, as you can see outside. It's a nice evening. This room is the Bankard Room in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City in the American wing. And this would be an 18th century upstairs parlor. So just a nice little parlor. Green was very popular wall color at that time. And you can see they have it made so it looks like you're looking out onto the street downstairs. So it's very nice. Who else is here? Miss Silver. I'm happy to have you here tonight as well. Always happy to have everyone here because tonight is a really special night because we're going to be talking about the 250th anniversary of news of Lexington and Concord traveling down throughout the American colonies. So it's April 24th. The year is 1775 and is the day after New York City has got the news about Lexington and Concord. Ms. Shea, you can visit the parlor and have tea anytime you wish. Just let me know. Although things right now in New York City are a bit chaotic, as I'll be discussing tonight, so you may want to wait until things calm down a little bit more, as we have had quite a tumultuous 24 hours here, or more than 24 hours now, since the news arrived. So it's Monday, April 24th, 1775. It is 5 days after Lexington and Concord. And I know in your time, news travels very quickly about things. So you would have heard about Lexington and Concord, I think, in your time, probably within minutes of it happening. But remember, in the 18th century, there are only a few ways for information to travel. Me speaking to you, person to person, someone carrying it and running, someone carrying it while riding a horse, or someone traveling on a ship or a boat. So those are the only options we have for news moving between the colonies. Mr. Facemeyer from Manassas. Hello, Mr. Facemeyer. I don't know in my list how long it took this news to get to Manassas, Virginia. Probably 4 more days at least, if not more, from when we heard about it here in New York. Ms. Turley says Disney had a series on TV about Johnny Tremaine. I think he was an apprentice to the silversmith. The Sons of Liberty is a main song. I remember that. I had many families on my walking tour in New York whose kids watched Johnny Tremaine, so I'm pretty familiar with that. We're going to talk about the Sons of Liberty tonight as well. So those are the only ways for news to travel. So of course, it's going to take a number of days for news to get from Massachusetts down the eastern seaboard to all of the major cities. And the man who's going to be delivering that news, at least from Massachusetts to Philadelphia, is 23 years old, and his name is Israel Bissell. Well, let me see. I have a little box over here that's covering my notes. Mr. Facemeyer says both my parents were married on April 19th. Oh, that's what a great holiday, April 19th. That's fantastic. I think most Americans don't even think about April 19th, but I hope you do, especially this year because it is a big anniversary, the 250th year. So on April 23rd, at about noon, it was a Sunday, a beautiful Sunday. Everyone thought it was going to be a day like any other quiet Sunday with everything closed, people going to church in the morning, visiting friends and family in the afternoon, and just having a very beautiful, relaxing spring day. And at least it started out that way until about noon, when a young man named Israel Bissell rode into New York City and brought with him a document detailing the events that occurred at Lexington and Concord. Now, at first, people didn't believe that Mr. Bissell could have possibly been telling the truth because it had only been 4 days between Boston and New York, and no one had ever ridden from Boston to New York in only 4 days. And with him, Mr. Bissell did bring a document that was signed off every stop that he made along the way and was witnessed by someone either from the Committee of Safety, the Committee of Correspondence, or the Sons of Liberty, someone who would have been known to the stops further along the way to be respectable. And this is the ride that he made. And this is incredibly impressive for one young man on a horse. Where are my little glasses? Let me see. I printed in big letters, but I still can't see it without my little glasses. What a terrible thing, but they do look nice. I mean, they don't look 18th century nice, but they look nice. So April 19th at 10 a.m., right after the battle occurred, Mr. Bissell left Watertown, Massachusetts. And on the same day, he was already in Worcester. Generally, a ride, I believe, that would have taken a day or two. So in one day, he got to Worcester. By 2 days, by the next day, April 20th, he was already in Connecticut, had passed into Connecticut, Pomfret, Connecticut, where he told Israel Putnam, who you might know was an officer in the French Indian War, who was plowing his fields with his son, that the war had started. He knew Mr. Putnam and he continued on. April 20th, he spent in Connecticut, and by the end of the day at 7 p.m., he had already reached New London, Connecticut. So that's just 1.5 days of travel from 10 o'clock on the 19th to 7 o'clock on the 20th. He'd already gone from Watertown to New London. On the 21st, he was in Lyme. He took a ferry across the Connecticut River, where he found himself in Old Saybrook. And then that's 4 a.m. At 7 a.m., he was in Killingworth, Connecticut, and at 8 a.m., he was in East Guilford. By 10, he was in Guilford. By noon, Branford. On April 21st at night, he finally made it to New Haven, Connecticut. That's 2.5 days from Watertown to New Haven. That is stunning. They said that he was riding his horses to exhaustion. He would get to a stop, he would stop, rest, get a new horse, and continue on his way. By April 22nd at 8 a.m., he was in Fairfield, Connecticut. And as I mentioned yesterday, April 23rd, he arrived in New York City, where he met with Captain Alexander McDougall. Now, when he rode into New York, you can imagine the incredible disarray that occurred as a result of his message being read to everyone. And of course, all of those stops that I mentioned were all witnessed, so that Captain McDougall saw the names on the witness list and he knew that this was a legitimate or an honest rider who'd arrived in New York. Ms. Roberts, from New Jersey, I love our Thursday nights together as well, Ms. Roberts. Thank you for being here. So you can imagine, poor Bissell was exhausted. His horse collapsed from exhaustion. He had something to eat and he was planning to stay. He was planning to go on to Philadelphia. Captain McDougall offered another rider to continue to Philadelphia, but Mr. Bissell has since left and has gone to Philadelphia, and he'll probably be there today on the 24th, where he can announce to the Continental Congress that the war has begun. Now, can you imagine the confusion that was caused as a result of this message. Mr. Q and I were here at home, quietly enjoying the afternoon, reading the newspaper. As a matter of fact, Mr. Q and I were reading the newspaper about and discussing an event that occurred last week here in the city. As you know, this problem, this military occupation has been going on in Boston for a year now, a little over a year. And merchants here in New York and other manufacturers and people sending raw materials have been sending materials to Boston to aid General Gage and the military there. And this has been very controversial for the past week, that anyone would want to make money or income on outfitting the soldiers that are oppressing the people of Boston. So last week there was a meeting of our association, which tried to encourage the gentlemen of the town who make nails to not ship nails to the military in Boston, because of course, they melt them down and they make musket balls out of them. And it turned into, quite a heated discussion, as in the gentleman who manufactured the nails did not want to stop doing it because there was so much money to be made. The British just paying way overpriced for this, and they didn't want to give up the income. Well, this led to a disagreement between the two gentlemen who were selling the nails. You find the story in the newspaper so that I can get this right for you. I have many newspaper stories to share with you today. Here we go. La, 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 la. Oh, here they are. So the two gentlemen, and I was not at this meeting, so excuse me for not knowing who they were. I try to refrain from these activities. Occasionally, Mr. Q will go to some of these meetings, but he happened to not be at this one either. The two men who refused, Mr. Thurman and Mr. Harding, of course, refused to stop sending the nails to General Gage because there was so much income to be made on this. Other gentlemen were extremely angry about all of this, and as a result, Mr. Thurman and Mr. Harding began being harassed by some of the gentlemen of this town. Oh, who else is here? Raphael. Oh, you are correct. Raphael says he wagers Governor Colden found the affairs of the day most vexatious. Indeed, he did. And I will be reading to you tonight some of Governor Colden's comments on this whole affair. And my dog Rex said, my dog Rex is telling all of you to please hit the thumbs up on my video. Please do that. I'm not sure what that means in my times. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe, and tell all of your friends too to join Mrs. Q on Thursday nights to learn all about our nation's 250th birthday, which we're going to be doing hopefully for the next 8 years together until we get to the evacuation in the fall of 1783. So quite a task ahead of us, isn't it? As Mrs. Q changes over that time and changes location also. So two members of the Sons of Liberty, Mr. Marinus Willett and Mr. Isaac Sears, were arrested by Mayor Hicks for harassing Mr. Thurman and Mr. Harding. Mr. Willett paid the bail and went home, but as they tried to take Mr. Sears to the jail, the Sons of Liberty rescued him, took him to the Common, and a huge meeting turned out on the Common. A giant crowd was formed. And of course, Governor Colden was extremely upset by all of this, as was everyone. And Governor Colden ultimately, in a very good decision, decided not to do anything about it. His view was to just, let that whole thing blow over, let people express their displeasure, and that to try to do anything to prevent this would just cause more heated dissent in the town. So Governor Colden showing some of his better decisions. And also he says, he just didn't have any forces here to force anyone to do anything. So that kind of blew over. Mr. Q and I were discussing that just as Mr. Bissell arrived with the news of Lexington and Concord. So already we were discussing some of the things that have been going on here that have been causing dissent and disruption as a result of whether or not to help the troops at Boston, because it is good income. Of course, you can guess Mr. Q and I do not help them, but there are other merchants who do. LB Girl 88, greetings from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. course, Gulf Coast. Thank you for your videos and research. Oh, it's summer where you are, I'm sure. Nice and hot and humid. It's still very cool here in where I am, really in the hills of Pennsylvania. But also, if I were truly at Hanover Square, New York, it's still rather cool in New York in April as well. So it's still just spring here. So already this dissent had been going on, the Tories making fun of the Sons of Liberty and laughing at them, calling them a bunch of buzzing or harmless insects, making a lot of noise, but not being very meaningful. Well, as you might guess, when the news arrived yesterday of Lexington and Concord, all sorts of things happened, and no one is laughing at the Sons of Liberty anymore. Now, I have a document to share with you here. Let's get our first document. And this was a document carried by Mr. Israel Bissell, a handwritten document, and you can see all the times that he arrived on the document there, and the places, the dates, and the times he arrived. So this is Mr. Bissell's, a page from the document that Mr. Bissell carried with him on to New York. So we have this document here to show the authenticity of his ride. And this document was printed right away by the printer, Mr. John Holtz. And it's all about the entire story of what happened at Lexington and Concord and how the message reached us. And this was already printed last night, April 23rd. So printed very, very quickly. All about all of the things that occurred on the way here, the ride, where he stopped, who he spoke to, everything here in this document. Now, in today's Weekly Mercury, already Mr. Hugh Gain has an issue out of the Weekly Mercury, also telling the story from various points of view. And he says, yesterday morning, we had reports in the city from Rhode Island and New London that an action had happened between the King's troops and the inhabitants of Boston, which was not credited, but about 12 o'clock, an express arrived with the following account. And so this is Mr. Bissell's account from Watertown, Wednesday morning. To all friends of American liberty, let it be known that this morning, before break of day, a brigade consisting of about 1,000 or 1,200 men landed at Phipps Farm at Cambridge and marched to Lexington, where they found a company of our colony militia in arms, upon whom they fired without any provocation and killed 6 men and wounded 4 others. By an express from Boston, we find another brigade are upon their march from Boston, supposed to be about 1,000. The bearer, Israel Bissell, is charged to alarm the country quite to Connecticut, and all persons are desired to furnish him with fresh horses as they may be needed. I have spoken with several who have been dead and wounded. Have seen dead and wounded. You know how difficult it is to read 18th century typeface. I know I should be used to it, but occasionally it still troubles me. So I've spoken to some who have seen many dead and wounded. And now I lost my place. Oh, so I'm so agitated over what has happened. So many dead and wounded. Pray let the delegates from the colony to Connecticut see this. They know Colonel Fawther of Brookfield, one of their delegates. So they're asking to get the news to the delegates at the Continental Congress. J. Palmer, one of the Committee for Safety, a true copy taken from the original per order of the Committee of Correspondence for Worcester, April 19th, 1775. And then all the signatures, Mr. Nathan Baldwin, the town clerk, then on to Fairfield, Connecticut, and then a little message from Fairfield signed by Ebenezer Williams, and then a whole bunch of signatures and other messages added on as he rode through to New York. Now, Colonel Marinus Willett, it's not Colonel Willett yet, Mr. Marinus Willett, still Captain Marinus Willett, said that the receipt of the news in New York occasioned an impulse in the inhabitants which produced a general insurrection of the populace, who assembled, and not being able to procure the key of an arsenal where a number of arms belonging to the colonial government were deposited, forced open the door and took possession of those arms, consisting of about 600 muskets and bayonets and cartridge boxes, to each filled with ball cartridge. These arms were distributed among the most active of the citizens, who formed themselves into a voluntary corps and assumed the government of the city. They possessed themselves of the keys of the customs house and took possession of all the public stores. There was a general stagnation of business. The armed citizens were constantly parading about the city without any definite objects. And that pretty much is what happened yesterday. When news, well, so back up. So Mr. Q and I were discussing what happened last week with Mr. Willett and Mr. Sears when we heard a great deal of commotion down the street at the Merchant's Coffee House. Very strange for a Sunday to hear so much commotion going on. So we got dressed and went over to see what was happening. And there was a huge crowd and quite a bit of disarray as everyone was reading the message from Lexington and Concord. Mr. Bissell by that time had moved on over to San Francisco, where he was eating and getting another horse and then taking off to go to Philadelphia. So we didn't personally get to greet this young man ourselves. But as news got around the city that we were now at war with England, this is precisely what the gentlemen did. They went to the armory and broke in and took all the weapons out because, of course, we must now arm ourselves. Now, you might find it difficult to believe that after what we have learned, there are still people here in this city who believe we are not in danger, that this is only a problem for Massachusetts. How could this possibly be, I ask, that one wouldn't believe that the English are here now to subdue all of us, all the way down the coastline? But there are many here who don't believe that, and we are still arguing here about whether or not to send delegates to the Continental Congress, which is sitting in Philadelphia, likely getting the news themselves today. So, my friends, if you don't know already, New York is a highly divided colony, about half Tory and half Whig. So half of the population here supporting England and supporting what is happening in Massachusetts as being a fully legitimate use of the English military against us, and half of our colony believing otherwise, which makes it very difficult for us to achieve any sort of majority thought about anything. And as you can imagine, the arguing goes back and forth incessantly. Last week, we looked at the pamphlets that are being written by Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Seabury. Even as this is going on, the debate still continues that we should not continue the non-importation, non-exportation, non-consumption agreement, that we should not send delegates to the Continental Congress because it will only inflame England against us, and so forth. But a notice did come out today that there should be a meeting to elect a committee of 100. A committee of 100. I know you're laughing at us. We currently have a committee of 60 that is governing the colony. Being insufficient and not being able to make up its mind about anything, they now propose a committee of 100. Let me ask all of you, how successful do you think a committee of 100 will be at deciding anything? But this is where we are. So next will be elections for our committee of 100, who will then decide, I'm sure, to send delegates to the Second Continental Congress. I do think that I may have mentioned to you last week, perhaps the week before, that our colonial assembly refused to thank the gentleman who attended the First Continental Congress. There was a motion made and it failed. So this is where we are in New York. What do I have here? I have something else. Oh, in a signed certificate dated, well, this is later, September 6th, so I really don't know about it yet, but you may find it interesting. Jacobus Stoutenberg stated that when the account of the Battle of Lexington arrived in New York, he says 422 muskets under his care at the City Hall, and sundry persons took these away with all the accoutrements, including 28 muskets and their accoutrements, which had been given to him to be repaired. So they took the weapons that were for repair from him as well. So making this about 550 by his account weapons that were stolen. Now, Judge Jones, who you might know, Judge Thomas Jones, who lives on Long Island and is a Tory, unapologetically a Tory, and that, of course, is his right to have that belief, as we all have rights to our point of view and our beliefs. Judge Jones says that on Sunday morning, the 23rd of April, a confused account arrived from Boston of a skirmish at Lexington between a detachment of the King's troops and a party of the rebel army. The Republicans instantly took the alarm. They had wished for it for a long time. They received the news with avidity. Isaac Sears, John Lamb, and Donald Campbell paraded the town with drums beating and colors flying, attended by a mob of Negroes, boys, sailors, and pickpockets. In other words, according to Judge Jones, the worst of the town, inviting all mankind to take up arms in defense of the injured rights and liberties of America. He says the posts were stopped, the mails opened, and the letters read. In the afternoon, a number of the faction under their old leaders were the most active, seized upon a sloop. Oh, this is true. As a matter of fact, we saw this happen. Any ships that were in Murray's Wharf or any of the other ports along the East River that were already loaded with goods meant for Boston were boarded, and all of those goods were removed. In the case of the sloop that Mr. Jones is talking about, I think this had flour and other types of food for the making of bread and preparing food for the soldiers. This was all taken off. He says the whole city became one continued scene of riot and confusion. And I would agree with him that the town did become a scene of riot and confusion. So much so that today, I still did not open my store today. And we have been either at home or visiting friends and discussing what is going on and what is to come next. There is no law and order in the city now, and I fear that things will never be as they were on Saturday, April 22nd, that our beautiful city will never be the same again. I don't know how long our sufferings will be, and I don't know what ultimately will become of us. I'm sure the British will come here as well. I don't know what will happen when they get here. I don't know if I will still even be here, and how long this war will go on, how much of our country it will encompass is all conjecture at this point. But the militias are raising here and going to Boston to help the people of Boston. I hear that in Connecticut, the merchant and ship captain Benedict Arnold is already raising men to go to Massachusetts, as is Israel Putnam already going. I'm sure there'll be men from New York going as well. We've received a letter from Westfield, Connecticut, which says the eyes of America are on New York. The ministry have been promised by some of your leading men that your province would desert us. Indeed, as I mentioned to you, that many of us are loyalists. And of course, the loyalists send letters to England, encouraging England and saying that we in New York will depart from the unanimity of the other colonies and help England to achieve their aims here. So Connecticut is saying, we have heard that there are men from your province promising them in England that you will break with the others. He says, take care of yourselves. We have more than enough men to block up the enemy at Boston. And if we are like to fall by treachery, by heaven, we will not fall unrevenged on the traitors. But if balls or swords will reach them, they shall fall with us. So in other words, they are saying it's just as easy for them to come to New York as it is to go to Massachusetts. And it's no time now to delay or be merely neutral. He that is not for us is against us and ought to feel the first of our resentment. You must now declare yourselves most explicitly one way or the other, that we may know whether we are go to Boston or to New York. If you desert, our men will as cheerfully attack New York as Boston, for we can but perish, and that we are determined upon to be free. So here we are, being threatened by our neighbor Connecticut, that if we don't declare ourselves immediately, that they will come here. If we declare ourselves against the colonies, they will come. Otherwise, we must declare ourselves to be with the colonies, and they will go to Boston. You can see the kind of confusion that this is causing now with various people in the colonies now threatening and opposing each other. But it is imperative that we are united against England. So in some way, New York will have to be delivered, I hope, on the side of good and all that is right. Lieutenant Governor Cadwallader Colden, the newspaper reports, informs the council that last night a number of persons violently seized 530 stand of arms which belonged to the city and were lodged in the city hall. That they also seized the public powder house and have put a guard of 50 men to maintain it. That they have been parading through the town this day and have proclaimed a meeting of the inhabitants this afternoon in order, as it is said, to choose military officers, when they declare their intention is to oblige His Majesty's troops, which are now in the barracks in the city, to lay down their arms. The advice of the council is desired in this alarming exigency of affairs. Mr. Q this afternoon did go up to the Commons to attend this meeting and to see what was going on, and he urged restraint on the part of the rebel men here to not be violent and to not attack the British soldiers, but to be prudent in their behavior. And Mr. Q is a very well-respected gentleman, and his opinion does carry a reasonable amount of weight. And he did have some other very influential gentlemen there with him, Mr. Smith and some others. Now, Virginia, we hear a delegate to Congress from Virginia wrote, "The storm thickens very fast." So this was last week that this gentleman in the Congress from Virginia said this. He says, "The storm thickens very fast. The New Yorkers have received intelligence that their town is to be fortified and 14 regiments to be sent there to cut off the communication between the southern and eastern colonies. Thus has united them to a man in the American cause. They are forming themselves and beg assistance from the Southland." Well, this isn't, as you know, entirely correct, and that some of us are begging assistance, but others would much more likely be on the side of England. It is true, though, that many gentlemen here, Mr. Q included, believe that the aim of England will be to come to New York and try to cut off the northern colonies from the southern colonies to create two separate fields of engagement, a northern theater of battle and a southern theater of battle. So perhaps that is what they're intending. Others believe that they will have an intention to come down the Hudson River to take control of the Hudson River all the way from Montreal here to New York and cut off New England from the other colonies, that being a possibility. So there are many conjectures going around the town today, and it has been extremely chaotic. The gentlemen are marching around. I hear rumor that the mayor and the governor are feeling quite unsafe. And I think, this is a letter that was received from Philadelphia today. Yes, indeed, from Philadelphia to Misters Delancey, White, Colden, Watts, and Cooper of New York. So these are our leading Tories in New York. The paper is signed 3 millions, meaning the people of the colonies, and it says it appears from a number of authentic letters from London that the present hostile preparations against the American colonies, meaning what has occurred at Lexington and Concord, right? This is written before that has occurred. That the preparations against the colonies were occasioned by nothing but assurances from you of the defection and submission of the colony of New York. See, mischief afoot all the time from these Tories writing to their benefactors in England, making promises they cannot keep. It is impossible to unfold the extensive and complicated nature of your crimes. You have defeated the attempts of the Congress to bring about a constitutional reconciliation with Great Britain. In other words, by giving Great Britain hope that New York will break with the others, there's no chance of getting a reconciliation. You have involved your fellow subjects in Britain, Ireland, and the West Indies in all the distresses which must speedily fall upon them from an interruption of their trade with America, meaning our non-importation, non-exportation, non-consumption agreement about to go into effect. They say, but you've done more. You've unsheathed the sword of Britain and pointed it against the bosom of your own country. You have held up a signal for a civil war. And all the calamities of towns in flames, a desolated country, butchered fathers, weeping widows, and children now lay entirely at your doors. Go now, you parricides, to the press of your associate James Rivington, and there satiate yourselves with your triumph. But do not presume too much upon the impunity of Bernard Hutchinson and other traitors to America. Repeated insults and unparalleled oppressions have reduced the Americans to a state of desperation. Execution of villains in effigy will now no longer gratify their resentment. In other words, no more just hanging effigies, as I told you they did of Mr. Rivington a few weeks ago. That won't be enough, they say from Philadelphia. The blood of your unfortunate British and American fellow subjects who've already fallen in Massachusetts Bay calls to heaven for vengeance against you. The injury you have done to your country cannot admit of a reparation. Fly for your lives or anticipate your doom by becoming your own executioners. To give you just a taste of what has been happening here since news arrived yesterday at noon. Now, I certainly don't know if even tomorrow I'll open my shop or when I will open again. It is very unstable out there on the street. It's a bit quieter out tonight. But as you can imagine, it hasn't stopped since the news arrived. We haven't slept since Saturday night. Mr. Q and I were up all night last night. So much noise outside, so much confusion throughout the night. It's very unsettling. Our housekeeper, Amelia, is terrified and wouldn't go out today at all. Mr. Q, in her stead, did our shopping, went to the markets and did the shopping as Amelia would not go. And Mr. Q decided he didn't want me to go, but of course, I'm not worried about going out by myself in this. Mr. Q thinks I'm silly for being so brave, and well, perhaps I am, but everyone in the town knows surely what side I am on and what side Mr. Q is on. There's no doubt about our loyalty to the Whig and Rebel cause here. So I don't think I would be in any danger, especially being a lady who everyone knows. But Mr. Q instead insisted I stay home today. As I mentioned, our housekeeper, Amelia, would not leave at all. And so I have been inside and, go out through the back to visit my friends across our backyard and talk a little bit about what's going on. If you do not know how our houses are laid out, they're laid out, at least on my street, right next to each other. And in the back, we all have space in the back, which is one common space among all of the houses. So we can all go out through the back of our homes and enjoy a nice country-like atmosphere. So many of us were outside there. Many ladies were outside there today talking to each other about what we think will happen. My friend and Mrs. R and Mr. R were at their printing press today, of course, printing the news as usual. So very brave of them to be out and printing. But of course, they're also safe because, the side that they're on is well known to all as well. And there may be many civilian Tories in the town right now, but the civilians who are armed are the Whigs, are the rebels, and there simply aren't enough soldiers in the town to affect any type of problem. And I'm sure there'll be various discussions over the coming days of whether or not these shipments of goods should be allowed to leave for Boston. That will be a very interesting conversation, and I will update you on that next Thursday and let you know what is proceeding with that. But I assume that in Philadelphia today, they have received the news, and I wonder what the Continental Congress will do. Will this news be enough to get our friends in the South, besides Virginia, on our side here as rebels? Virginia, we know, supports us, but the other Southern colonies are not so interested, believing that this is just a Massachusetts problem. And well, many New Yorkers think it's a Massachusetts problem. As I said, I don't understand people, how anyone could think that with our port, our proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, our East River, which gives access to the Long Island Sound, the North Shore of Long Island and New England, and of course our Hudson's River, which carries one all the way north up to Lake Champlain and then on to Montreal, how this would not be in the sights of the English. To think otherwise, I think would be silly. And I am just a lady who has not studied warfare and who is not formally educated. And even I can see the value of our geographic location here in New York. So I think that to assume we are not on the plan to be invaded would be rather foolish. So this is where we stand here in New York, our beautiful town. Um, Chaos reigning in the streets, people turning against each other, people afraid to go out, no one knowing what will come next or when it will happen. And I fear our beautiful town will never be as it was just 2 days ago. And I don't know when peace and security will return again. So thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I hope you enjoyed my story. Please like my videos and share them. That will help me out a lot. And you guys are all really wonderful for joining me every week. I notice my views are going up, so I'll keep doing these. And as I mentioned, I also have some more formal videos planned to teach about America 250. We don't want to have too much propaganda on either side about our nation's history. So together, oh, excuse me. So together we'll try to step through using the firsthand accounts of what occurred through those 8 years of the American Revolution. Oh my goodness. My allergies are terrible here in the country. Oh, Mrs. Q did not have this problem living in New York City, but now in the country, allergies are quite consuming. So thank you all again for joining me. If you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comments and I will look. I'll be happy to answer them for you. I'm going to look to see what dates news hit the other cities as we go down the coast. As you can imagine, as Mr. Bissell arrived in the different larger towns, other riders went out from those towns and spread the news as well. So he's coming down the eastern seaboard, hitting the more populated areas, and then people from those areas will fan out in different directions to carry the news of Lexington and Concord. Ms. Silver, it was my pleasure. Ms. Healy, you have a good evening too, Mrs. Healy, and say hello to Mr. Healy from Mr. Q and I. And thank you very much for joining me. I will see you next week. I will be back on my radio show Sunday on republicbroadcasting.org, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And I will be talking more about the life of Israel Bissell and more about how the warning was carried down the Eastern Coast. So by Sunday, I'll know when everyone got notified and how they acted when they got the news. So thank you all so much for joining me. And I'll see you again next Thursday. A wonderful week until then. Thank you.